into that category. You'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program? Well, why don't you drop us a line? Address it to Let's Talk Programming Care Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis. Or give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You got a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized, and when you're getting on the show, you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, respect yourselves and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem that's not within our broadcast standards. But we encourage you to always be forceful with your point. Again, thank you very much for joining us. Your voice in the community, thought I get results. You can also follow this show on our YouTube channel at Vaughan Radio, on our Facebook page at Vaughan Radio. You get their video stream as well. Tonight we have a different format. We have, as advertised, I have an interview that I did, well, a discussion with a gentleman. He is one of our illustrious sons of the soil. And I can tell you that through the years, I've gotten quite a bit of information, as Edric would say, to put on my desk. So that's one of the reasons why perhaps sometimes I got some good information. And what happened was that I always said to him for years, perhaps we can talk about it, you know, because a lot of our history and what our people have done have gone unrecorded, they're not passed on, and so on. And so, you know me, I campaign real hard. And then finally, along with his daughter, Shauna, I thank her very much, we finally got it done. I went by his home, lovely home, and we talked a little bit about it. His name is Edric Wedge Pemberton. Now you know him?
Yes. Yeah. Contractor.
Yes.
One of the kings of the island.
Right, and you'll hear about, before he got into contracting and all that and building, you'll hear how he was involved in politics.
That's good. It's very important that we know these things, I suppose.
Right. So we spoke with him, and he told us about the famous, you remember we heard a story about the NRP went around and pick up money on a pickup with some drum, and then a fella got locked up, the police locked up a fellow. Well, we got the truth about that as well, and then he told us how he got into building, and it's something for the young people, because people think things were hard now, but those days, he'll tell you how it was. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll just listen to it. It's about 20-25 minutes, and then we can talk a little bit about it, and then you all don't go away. As a matter of fact, tell your friends to make sure they tune in, because we got something else, as the Donald would say, that's huge. So here is Edric Wedge Pemberton and myself. So I'm speaking with Edric Pemberton. Everybody knows him as Wedge. I call him the Great Wedge. And he is one of the newest stalwarts, we know more popular in the building industry. He's built a number of fine edifices in Nevis. However, today, I want to commend him and congratulate him for his great contribution in the development of Nevis in this particular field in the construction industry. He is one of the local contractors who have taken on some very, very big projects here in Nevis. So, Reg, we thank you again for your service to the country. But today we are going to speak about your involvement in politics. A lot of people do not know about that, and you and I was fortunate every now and then I run into you, and you give me some of that rich history in your involvement and in the early 70s and those tumultuous times. And so as a young man then, Wedge, we would like to know first of all, how did you become involved?
Yeah, it was think it was about 66 and 36, I think about 1970. I think I traveled to Tatola in 65 and I come back in Tunis in 1970, so I had a little problem, so his office was over Slack, where Moffett got a liquor store, you know.
His name in whose office?
Mr. Daniel.
Mr. Daniel, that's Simeon Daniel.
So, after we finished talk about my problem, he asked me, well, what am I a young time? Good looking everyone. He asked me what I do, so I said, some sort of dirty person. He asked me, could you build a house? I tell him, well, we never been done yet, you know? He told me that, well, I want to build a house.
Yeah.
So I had it as a joke, but I didn't know that the man needed it. So I was already this for a little while, still living home with me parents after coming back from Tatola. So one afternoon I came home and my mother told me, boy, you never see a black man in all my life. So I couldn't recall because I thought he was making a joke.
Yes.
So about 2 weeks after now, I go back home again and my mother told me, man was looking for you again. So you better go to him, because the man is serious. So the weekend I went by him and I talked to him and he told me, man, maybe not look who you are all the time and I read you, man. And he said, man, we just get ready to go back at Tatola. The people have been called me and tell me come down as quick as possible. So I said, I just getting ready. He said, man, put up the foundation for me. He seemed to be a reasonable man and he had a lot of sweet talk and all kind of things. So yeah, I agreed to put up the foundation. And after we cast the floor, putting up stones and so on. After we cast the floor, man put up the blocks on me now, man. So we put up the blocks. After we put up the blocks, she must cast the beam and he went down something when we put on the roof. So after we put on the roof and everything, alright, I said, well, I really got to leave now because every week them on a carbon. So I got to go back to Tatola. So I really got to finish up the house right there. So that was it. So after that we keep in contact. So when I really finally come back home and want to stick around a little bit, maybe to build my own house and so on. I was pretty nearby him and we even get closer, like friends.
Yes.
So sometimes I stop by when I hear the string down up there and well, I didn't write it up because I know little good what I might be about there and after me get why I decided.
Yes.
I left here in a big shot, but well, we are our friends.
Yes.
So coming to the politics now, everybody know what went down between the Labour Party, Bracha and St. Daniel and Ivor Steele.
You see, the thing is, Rich, that everybody does not know. So in those days, things were not so nice between Labour and the people of news.
Yeah, because they even had an army man and the Christian. Yeah, I think he's the leader or something like that. They even had an army man on the board.
Yeah, they actually even for us.
He put army man on the board. I don't know who was fighting against.
Yes.
Man, they really loved one and all kind of thing. So we couldn't get involved in politics and well, they found the party and all kind of thing and the party farm and the agenda, secession at all costs in English. So after, getting a old Ricky from St. Kitts, and he looked like everything over at the center, and they keep me down there. I mean, we feel, at that time we feel like roads bad and all kind of thing. Yeah. We feel like second-hand people. No electricity, because a lot of us had to use land during that time. We had a black source and all kind of thing, but we had to use land because they can't put on only the big shots and them could get on the generator line. Yes. Water was running like that. So we try to support behind NRP with where they was coming with. So and that was like in the early 70s, 71 and so on. Yeah, 71, 72, 73 levels. So I'm going to come right to the point right now because, if I got to talk, it would be a lot of things to say. But I'm going to come right to the point. One Sunday morning, down by where I live, well, Harris Level and Sonny Paris, those were like main contributors, strong supporters and so on at the party. That's the Negus Reformation. The old, right? So, and then guys used to real capital together above me. Right? My brother was second. Yeah. So, a lot of them kind of thing. That's all I research together. They're not all around me, but I respect them. And, yes. We got a lot in common. And we just catch up by signal because of the Eagles Assembly. Make your plans and so on. So one Sunday morning, the man come and will tell me why we plan to make some collection of money, who go to England, constitutional tax and all kind of thing. And he say everybody around, everybody watch our leg. So we tell I told them that and a man got to defend this is my country, so I got to defend it. So I tell them tell me something, I'm not going to back down. Tell them say in about 2 hours time they could get ready and then fix up the pickup and about it. Yes. So that happened about the benches from Gilbert, because at the time Gilbert used to carry a lot of workers from Jingaman to town. So I had to got the benches and so on and just walk around by them. Yes. So that people could sit down in the pickup. Yes. And they had a job inside the building. When they make the collection, they just straight in the job. Yeah. And I didn't work after Mr. Everything come and take away the money, way the build up here that way. Yes. That's other evidence there. Come and take the money in the car. So when people are talking about job and money, they're not only to the money in the job and afterwards, because they said the same that we get after the gotcha with the police and everything stop us, right? Yes. Or the police came and stop us. Yeah. Well, let me continue. Yes. We start at the base. That's down by Harris Level. Mamaru. We start by Mamaru and we went to Joseph's side. And we come around Joseph 14, Barnesburg, Cattenburg, Westbury, and Brickley and all of Castle. Yes. So when we reach Butlers now, that's what happened. That's where the splash down came. A lot of police was there and got on gun and all kind of thing. Well, the Butler people anticipate that we coming. So everybody was kind of together like and want to make the contribution and all kind of thing, because by 99% of the people in support of the cause.
Yes.
And I see Mr. Daniel have to hold people that Sunday because they want to crush the police. I don't know what happened over there. I don't know what happened. But I could tell you that I was the driver of the truck, the owner of the truck, and well, as I tell you, I'm not backing down. So had his gun into the side of the ear, attack, all kind of thing. I didn't even feel like anything happened.
Yes.
Because I was so pumped up with defending the country,
yes,
along with the people. Right?
Yes.
So after Mr. Nagel get them people cool down and so on, he said, well, we're going to start the collection. So they said, well, they checked the pickup and they said the pickup is not roadworthy. Mm-hmm. So I got to get it out of the road.
That's the police story.
Police, yeah. So we had to take, because them people really want to block the road. We had to take the time come out about the other.
Yeah.
We come on to Zion. But I will say we have my Zion.
Yes.
When we reach Zion, I don't know how many people have to get the news. But they were black and white. Mm-hmm. When I reach the school line, people are going back. So he's up by Swanston. That time he was the motor NRP. Yeah, so up there, the capital up there, we had to go because he wasn't in the collection.
Yes.
He wasn't there.
Yes.
He was home. So when I park upside, he went home. And he realized what going on. By the man, I never see nothing say it. The man inside him was a make all kind of noise and I put the damn mic on the truck, put the confounded mic on the truck.
Yeah.
Let's go. Can't let nobody stop us. This land is all and all kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
But he didn't see people even there too.
He was in the outside.
And you can't see anybody through you. So anyway, after Mr. Daniel told me, well, do what I said.
Yes.
Because all of them really stay with they stay with me. And they said, I got to get this out of it because after they said what I want to say, I realized that they want to stop the collection.
Yes.
Seemed to say, well, nobody with them, we're going to get a bus tomorrow and we're going to finish the collection. No study them.
Yes.
So don't be no trouble, just get this all off the road.
Mm-hmm.
So people were saying about locking up and all kind of thing, but nothing of such had happened like.
Yes.
One thing I know, well, the traffic police was Sammy Maynard.
Sammy Maynard, yeah.
He married to one of my cousins from Zion.
Mm-hmm.
So Sammy tell me, boy, when I'm done with you, you're going to carry him up the area. With them someone's who are going to try him.
Yeah.
So a couple weeks after he come with the summons them, and it was about 7 of them. And when the case called up, magistrate showed up and he charged me for one. He said he knew that time we used to go Springhill to pick up people with grass.
Yeah.
To feed the cattle and so on.
Yeah.
Because that time there was a lot of animals around.
Yeah.
And I just deal with donating people, so me will get knocked off the same day. So they catch me with that and they say, well, the magistrates tell me by he was eraser. So he said, well, you get 7 summons and we charge you $7.50. That is, so I tell them, but we have to pay, because we do not run. And everything was alright. He said, when Marshall really come and then everybody, you know, they happen. Yeah. So that was it. And after that, well, the morning after that, I was on the road first. Before one of the first week on the road, and nobody's disturbed me up to right now. So all in all, I realized that, well, they had one to stop the collection. But after that now, people, after them, do what they had to do with me and all, and then get me off the road. That was it.
Yes.
Yeah. So people say me lock up and all that thing, but nothing had took place.
Yes.
You know. So, but all in all, I believe everybody should stand up for the country, you know, man, and think seriously about it. Because I traveled to a couple of islands in the Caribbean. I live in Tatola, I live in Puerto Rico. I got to defend the country because I didn't have no problem at Tatola. When I decided I'm going to come back home, boy, I tell you, my son, where you going back up the place for? You are right. All we want is a piece of land and build your house here and do what you got to do. Yeah, but everybody can still.
Yes.
You know, so that was what it was all about. You know, and at that time, everybody was hungry. Okay. Move on from that era. And I personally, up to this day, I figure, well, if needs had separated, we would have been better off. Mm-hmm. Because I would honestly say that since that era, and that kind of support where we had, kind of passion, I don't see it again.
Yes.
You know. But I don't even know if it will come about again.
But you think, well, it could be because the generation now didn't have the same experience that you had. And to some degree, nobody really tells them about it. That is why, you see, when I run into you, I learn a little more than what I knew before. But this generation don't have a lot of ways they could know, and things are a little better off now, so they don't have the same hardship.
Yeah, but, okay. But they're more educated than us. Because when the standard 7 certificate was the final degree for
Yes.
to move on from it. And we actually go up in the land. We actually go up in the land. And most of the time, when someone really be something like cricket or something, you're in the land with the parents.
Yes.
And we concentrate, some of us take up what they leave off. But some of us, when I look at watch my schoolmates and compare them with what's going on now, we are a lot better than, because some of them reach to higher heights. I mean, I don't know for others, but my teacher, so they're still in contact with me.
Yeah.
And they're proud of your accomplishment.
Yes.
We had our head teacher in Franklin Grove, right? He said, somehow I saw something in you, but I couldn't pinpoint where it is. But boy, if I certain where you were going, I would have done hell out of you. And you then you'd have been some of the other one to teach people things.
Yeah.
You know. I say, I pray that program with bars, man. The percentage you make him proud. You know?
Yes.
And, you know, when I look around and see the especially not really taking up the full responsibility, I can't really criticize nobody because people do what they feel like.
Yes.
You know, but, you know, I figure, well, I mean, during our time, there was not as much construction going on. But we create a market for even the USA and the Virgin Islands, because I lived here before I was 20 years.
Yeah.
I just spent about 2 years in the profession, learning trade in Hawkins and so on. And I don't know who tell my parents that I'm capable.
Yes.
But every time you sit down with them and so on, I'm going to tell you, come along and be like everybody else. You know, and I wouldn't be ungrateful. I had to have manners to them. I mean, you know, if you rude to your parents, your bosses on them, regardless to the promises that you show, the potential, you know, they don't want to. So you got to be clean and all kind of thing, and it's quite different now. Some of them don't want your teacher money.
Yeah.
And man, them brothers bang you and all kind of thing, but if you're willing to know and so on, I mean, I know, I see certain fellows had to leave the profession and go into other field, but some of them make good of themselves in other field, like the fellow Simmons, Cass Millers, right?
Yeah.
He's one of them who he went to Tatolatu, but he didn't make it in the construction.
Yes.
But as far as I know about him, he did well in life.
Yes.
You know, so if you just like the Tower of Babel, when the Lord see, well, maybe we have too much children, then he put some of them to do other things.
Yes.
So in this world, some people got different opinions on that kind of thing, but what is for you, for you? You know, if you're going to be a teacher, that's the way you can take pride in and learn.
Yes.
You know, because in my school days, I got a lot of fellows who were great in the class, but outside that, they got to look to me for guidance.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and it wasn't home. It wasn't home.
You had to, from young.
Yeah, you learn it,
Yeah.
you know. Well, let me finish by saying, when I lived here in the 60s, I think, about 66, I think, I went to Virgin Gallery, and he had a Puerto Rican company up there, working up buildings, put on some addition, and before I leave here, they said, well, we only want stone masons alone. And well, I know that them arches of Montpellier, these where should be colors.
Yes.
You know, prove your work.
Yes.
Stand up and whatever you produce was accepted.
Yes.
So I went down. So when I got on the job, they put me to the back because I tell you I wasn't 20 years yet. Start out of school 16. So used to, like if you got the culvert, you put some wall to the side and
Yes.
build the road and whatever you got there. To the back of the building.
Yeah.
That's where they put me. I spent 3 days behind them. And then after that, they make preparation to the front of the building. And it was only me alone walking in front there. So I tell you, I wasn't all that old. So, behind others, I checked me back me and all kind of thing because when I tell them, pass the stone,
Yes.
and they give me something cussing.
Yes.
So, yeah, he say, go back me and all kind of thing, but I tell them, boy, no, you can't do it. Because whenever we do, you know, I like it. So, I just have an oil out frame. So one day I was there walking and sun hat and all kind of thing. And sometimes he would win an argue, but every time not going to be the same thing, right?
Yes.
So, after lunch a day, somebody come and tap me on the shoulder. I mean, you know how walking thing, you got to associate yourself with people. So I decided I'm going to come back with the hammer because I believe I But when I'm going to the general manager,
Oh, really? Yes.
tell me, shaking head and he tell me, boy, you're doing a fine job, no?
Yeah.
Tell me, well, work any day, every day. Just make sure the timekeeper get your time. He saw, I know I was an asset to them.
Yes.
So he had a man there from Tatola named Clement Fred. He was the top man in Stonewall, but he aged. So he cherished me up and all kind of thing. And with my own training and so on, I want to go to him, but I said, no, I'm not going to do it. So when the job finished, he asked me what would you do?
Yes.
And he does do all them building down Wickon ski and all kind of thing. And he do the stonework and all kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he want me to work with him. So me all time wonder. And he say he work at St. Thomas, he work at St. John's. So if I had joined up with him, I would have never been around him. I would have been a Tatolian.
Yes.
So, but you know, of countrymen, because I sent for my family and some of my families and them, they went well at the same time they too.
Yes.
But, well, I mean, I sent for them and they married the native down there and so on, and they're not coming back up yet.
Yes.
But I decided I'm going to come back up here. So here's it.
Yeah.
Up here is where I'm going to die. Whenever, if any one of them dead, and I could go down there, I would go for the funeral and all kind of thing. But I will actually say, I didn't start to own money that time working here. I started to own money when I started working at Tatola. And so I got that place as my second home. If I was to choose somewhere else to live, like, I think regardless to what, because I had that kind of soft spot in me, right? Because when the man told me, well, work anytime, the pocket was my bank, for 6 months. And after saving all the money, they put in it in $100 bill and all kind of thing. 6 months up. I tell my mother, well, if I got anything, I'll see 6,000.
Oh, really?
You know, so all these things are, up to now, I still got them on my mind.
Yes.
And you got to give credit where credit is due, regardless to what.
Yes.
You know, you start somewhere, and there was the initial step, you know.
Yes.
Afterwards, I come back home and, well, Mr. Chimoton struggling. Tell me come up here, Raleigh, tell me, man. Tell my boy, I'm not go back nowhere. But my mother must get in that and start to harass me again. So I went back that over. I mean, went to Puerto Rico. Spent a couple of years down there too. But after that, well, that's it.
Yes.
You know, I stick around and make my little contribution as much as possible. Now I'm old and soon dead, so I'll still be trying my best.
Yes, you know.
And wish nearest people well, but a lot of things could be said, but you know, you got to learn something. People can't tell you everything.
Yes.
So, you're not a teacher.
Yes.
So
You're a teacher in your own right.
yeah, so we got to, we want a lot of teaching.
Edric Wedge Pemberton. I should have had the other Edric here this evening as well to make some comments and some additions. So we want to thank Edric Wedge Pemberton for that, and we want to apologize for the quality of the recording and all that, right? I'm very sorry about it. We went into the field and it's not normally the standard that we want to produce, but I think if you were listening acutely, you got the gist of basically what he was saying. We will take a break and then we will come right back. We'll ask the in-house panel if they like to make a comment, and then we will get into other stuff.
With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Builders Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Builders Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builders Paradise has what you need. Wow! Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Builders Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts or call them at 466-4938.
Back on this episode of Thought That Get Results. We heard earlier a discussion with chit-chat with Edric Wedge Pemberton, one of our illustrious sons of the soil. You heard about some of his involvement in politics. He has done a lot of building, contracting work here on Nevis as well, and contributed heavily to the society. A lot of folks, we have a lot of our folks like that, and anybody who would like to share that with us, we're willing to have that as well. Now, what I'm going to do, we have, as I said, a part of the panel with us, and we're going to give them the opportunity if they would like to make any comment on it, and then we get into something else. Dr. Patricia Bartlett, good evening.
Good evening, WEBBO. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the listening audience. I listened to the story because I would have heard it before, and it is very consistent with the version that he would have given me a couple of months ago. But some things stuck out. When he said, everybody can't stay out, that resonated with me, because sometimes a lot of us travel and we forget home. And some people really don't make a contribution to the building of our country, the origin. And I think some people need to listen to that and take heed, because I think all of us owe something to where we came from, particularly those of us who got school in here. And then there was something else he said, the love for his country. Because based on his story, he had the potential to make lots of money, because $6,000 in that time was a lot of money. I would imagine that most of us would have an appreciation for that. Even now, $6,000 to some people is a lot of money. To me, maybe at this point, $6,000 is a lot of money. So you could imagine he could have been a multimillionaire if he had stayed out there. Well, not to say that he's not one, which might be very well a multimillionaire, but I meant in US dollars. And then he said that he had to make his little contribution, and that is a humble man for me, because Wedge has done a lot. Every building that I have ever worked in, Wedge had a part, in it. And then he has been very active in the community as well. And I know him up this time, even though he claims that he's old and he's ready to die, he's still making his rounds in terms of visiting other people, who could benefit from, his company now and then. Because sometimes he would come and serenade my godfather just across the street from my mother. And I really appreciate it, Wedge. And apart from that, I have a personal story with him. Because when I was going off to study, I needed somebody with backative. Visual, know what I mean when I say backative? Somebody who could co-sign for me my loan so that I could get a loan to go away. And Wedge was there for me. And I would always be indebted to him.
Let's go to Glendale. Glendale, what do you think?
I think it's a remarkable interview. I think we ought to be the chronicling the lives of many of these people who have done well in Nevis and who have stuck around and stuck it out and indeed give back to the country. I think they have a story to tell. A lot of young people will learn from these stories. Their rise was not something overnight. Their rise took through a lot of toiling and hard effort, and of course, involving themselves in the community. It tells young people who are aspirants or aspiring to be something or somebody, they can become like them, but it shows them the route in which they took to get there. It wasn't by sudden flight, and I'm keenly impressed by that. So the interview, I think a lot of that need to be done and chronicle and put in the face so young people can be exposed to that. And especially people who have an enterprising attitude or things they would like to do. It's not an overnight thing. It's a lot of toiling. It's a lot involved in terms of trying to get there. And it also but shows how people bind themselves to, people like Wedge, for example, binds himself to the society in a can-do spirit, in a giving back spirit, and I think that's remarkable. I really encourage a lot more of that, and it also shows younger Nigerians, for example, that we have a legacy, and a legacy they can bind themselves to, and at least they can relate to. WEBBO, I think it was remarkable.
Yes, and Conrad Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, WEBBO, and how are you doing? I'm happy to be here. WEBBO, interesting in every respect. I mean, he dealt with more than one aspect of interest to Nivision's life, I suppose. His personal journey is one that one can draw some inspiration from. So many of us, most of us, I suppose, of his generation in particular, came from where he said, the soil, working the land. You go and play cricket or whatever, but, the land. And he developed his skill, and he was able to go forward and contribute not only to Nevis, but to the little region and his family. He's a tower of strength. Actually, Wedge is one of the kings of Nevis. There are a few of them who I admire greatly. They, to me, exist in a realms way above the politicians, actually. They have impact on people's lives seriously. They have created employment. I mean, Wedge is one. Onaldo Tiverton, who is known as Trinity, is one. Orville Liebert, who is known as Lefko, is one. These people are a powerhouse of our society and highly inspirational. If you speak to any one of these guys, you almost feel the same, because they're almost telling you the very same thing, actually, in their journey to where they are today. And they have been contributing. These are the kings of Nevis. These are people who create massive employment. I speak to Onaldo Tiverton, and he tells me some people that work with him, they've been there for 20 years and since they left school. And there are times I know he wants to probably move out, but there are these people looking at him, wants him to stay in the game, so that life can continue for them, and so it is for my uncle Orville Liebert as well. Not just here, but in St. Lucia, in St. Croix, in St. Kitts. A man, big heart, good heart. And so I rank them so high, above most of people. Just got a lot of chat, because these are people who do things, and so Wedge, I tip my hat, and it goes without saying, I've worked on numerous projects that he did back in my early stage, and he was always a man of inspiration, and somehow we have what can I say, a fun way about things, Wedge in particular have that, and that makes him, quite approachable, quite an easy-going guy. As it relates to his contribution to the very early days of Nevis politics, that is profound. That is very profound to me, because I think what is lacking today, why we have not that pride that we should have, is actually the history. To me, those across the waters are trying hard to erase this history and to make us as if we're just floating in thin air, as if we don't know where we're from, and we never ever had a destination. So they keep playing with us up till today. But I believe if the history was being taught, was being promulgated and known by the younger people, I think Nivision pride would have been very high, and we would have navigated a path that would have put Nevis on a better plane today. And believe me, WEBBO, it's not too late to think this way. He spoke of army man in Nevis. That was my greatest fear as a kid. Army man. They were all over. They were on the Amigo. They were down in the post office yard right there. They're camping there. And everywhere I go, I used to see army men with massive guns. That is what we are coming out of. as a sister island of St. Kitts. You know, the politics of it is deep. You know, blood almost shed in Nevis. In fact, I grew up thinking that there would be a war between St. Kitts and Nevis, and I had no queries about that because of what I used to experience with army men and the back and forth and police and harassment and demonstration. I mean, I was a very young youth, but I was a part of it and emotionally stressed because my dad was in the front line as well. And these things must be known. Nevis history in politics, just recent history, cannot be erased by something they signed down in the courthouse and all these kind of things. I'm very hurt when I cannot come. Like last year, I felt awkward talking about secession. I felt awkward because they signed something down in the Treasury. You know, I mean, come on. We must be steadfast. We must know where we are going. And today I see we're just floating like a flying saucer, like we don't even drifting like dry leaves. We need purpose. And I think if the history is told, that purpose would be reinstated in our mind and our pride would return as Nevisians, because we don't have that anymore. Okay? And so that interview, various aspects of it, is very far-reaching. And I wish you can speak to more people who have such experience and who express such commitment to Nevis, you know, because give them some money and they run away, you know. I have this argument all the while with my son. He thinks I should be in Canada. He want me to come to Canada. I say, yo, I used to be in England. We used to be in England. I'm going back home to Nevis. I ain't serving these countries over here. Because I went to England, I started my own shop as I have in Pinnis. And I said, what I'm doing? I'll get myself together and return. You know, let me sweat in Nevis. Let me take my chances here. My son can't understand that because he think, oh, no, Dad, you could have been in Canada and you have such potential. And yo, I know all what you're saying. Okay, my commitment is to this little island here. And as an island, as a region, the Caribbean, and even though I am not really a racist, my race also, you know, but it's important for people like Wedge, one of the kings of Nevis, to be interviewed and for them to hide our love and commitment for our little island. And when we speak of nationalism, we speak of Nevis, you know, nationalistic, you know, because we're not going nowhere as far as I trek with our sister island. Our pride has been damaged. We need to reinstate that. We need to get back.
Yes, Glendy.
Yeah, you know, that example, his life is an example of what a great man once said. I think is the second Renaissance man that ever lived with, which would be Albert Einstein next to Da Vinci. Said that seek not a life of wealth but a life of value, and that's an example of a man seeking a life of value. And you know, like Naya was just saying, I mean, if many of our youths are exposed to these stories, so many stories around us, it makes them feel much more proud of who they are and their history and the possibilities. Instead, I mean, we look at crime, we look at a lot of things that are going on, the decadence in society, and we wonder, we pull our hair out and trying to figure out which way is the way forward in terms of getting these people on the right track. And I believe the element to resolving a lot of this is in our history, in doing a lot of these exposés, such as what you took on here. And some of our great persons has gone in the beyond already, but we have a few of them.
On the discussion that we had with Wedge, you can feel free to do so. But meanwhile, as I had indicated, Glendale Herbert is he'll tell you what position he is in the People's Democratic Alliance. Now, we're not going to discuss it in full, but at least we would like to know Glendale, because, you know, I normally would bring evidence that Pat and Naya don't know about. When I told them that there were 4 political parties in this race coming up next, they told me that they thought it was 3. And I don't like people to doubt me. So I would bring the hard evidence. So, Glendale, if you wish, you can let us know. Well, what I'll do, I'll just, you launched about 3 years ago, correct, Glendale? The PDA. Right. So I'll just play a little clip from that, and then you can tell us where you're at this time. I saw your St. James potential candidate a few days ago, and I asked him when are you going to launch? And he told me to ask you. But you know, so I'll play the clip just for a little refresh, and then you can tell us where you're at. The final question will come from one of the first questions, because almost everybody who asks me to ask you a question asks this in full or in part. Will you last?
Yes, that's a test. But I am convinced that, in fact, put it this way, we have spoke to enough people in Nevis to know that we would be an effective alliance and a force to reckon with. We are empowering people.
Andy Lyverd, Glendale Herbert, Patterson Fleming, members of the People's Democratic Alliance on Nevis. We thank you once again for giving us the opportunity to launch your your alliance right here in the Eastern Caribbean's Powerhouse, and the Let's Talk program taught that get results. Thank you once again, and you're always welcome to come here and speak with us. We wish you all the best. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening. Could we hear from Mr. Fleming, please?
You've got a question for him? Okay, they wanted to hear from you.
Good evening. I am very much a part of the alliance. The reason for me to be a part of the alliance is, the main thing is because of the love that I am getting from the organization. The true sense of the whole organization is about people of Nevis, and the way they've been hurting and no one been looking out for their interests. I see the alliance bringing that to the forum and bringing a great sense of love and care for the people of Nevis. And that's what I've been hungry for, and that's what I've been looking for. I mean, look at the graduation. So many children graduated, still on the street looking jobs. So many credits, so many passes, and still cannot find jobs for these young people. We are saying, and what the alliance is saying, they are about the people of Nevis and searching and making a better life for the Nevisian young people and the whole. And I'm solely looking at that, and I'm saying that is what I've been looking for. The Big Brother program that I am in searching, I've been crying for. I've been crying for that. The Big Brother program. I mean, I live in St. James's. I live in St. James's, and I've been asking over the years, when we gonna get a group to come and talk to these young men who sit on the block, who sit on the sidewalk? When we gonna reach out to them before they start doing criminal activities in this country? Are we gonna wait? And now we are waiting too late. And that's why the alliance is here today. And the alliance is here today to bridge that gap, to make a difference. The Big Brother program, going into the schools, get them before they reach out, get them together, create them, bring them as friends. That's what I'm looking forward to. So, yes, I am 100% behind the alliance, and I'm looking forward to some of the great programs that are going to be rolling out very, very soon. I'm again saying to you, you're welcome to chat with us, and we're very happy to have you a part of us, because everybody is welcome under that umbrella.
And in your own case, as you stated earlier, the alliance gave you love.
A lot of love. And that's what we need. That's what we need. And like we mentioned earlier, the Big Brother program, trust me, is going to work well to decrease crime in this country.
Glendale, that was 3 years ago. Where are we now?
Where are we now? Right now, at the moment, the political season is about to begin. We have made a decision within amongst ourselves not to contest no election, at least the next election coming up. Of course, one of the reasons for the decision was basically once NRP had decided to retool and reconstruct itself, after a number of talks, of course, meetings and stuff, we decided to step back and step away from it. Step away from the concept and just let the parties, the national party at that point, which was NRP, the oldest party, to do its thing and see if they can actually put together the right campaign in order to be able to make a strong contest. We do believe in democracy, we do believe in broadening out the democracy where more people are involved, but if you have, and then we did our own calculus within amongst ourselves in terms of running a third party. What would have happened in our calculus as far as we're concerned? NRP had already a machinery built in place. You have to say you need time to build out a machinery, and it was, remember, after the last election in 2017, it was a 4-1 loss to NRP. The party was all over the place in terms of its future, and basically this whole birth of the PDA came out of that, the concept. Again, like I said, after a number of dialogue and etc. with NRP at that point, and amongst ourselves, and the party took a new direction, and the NRP at least indicated that. We decided to look at it and look at ourselves different as it relates to that. So that's where we are at this juncture right now as it relates to the politics of the day.
So you are not contesting the next election?
No.
Will you contest the one after that?
I don't know that yet.
Okay.
I don't know anything about the next election. The one that comes after that and after that. But for now, we do believe that there are not two major parties in the country. There's a new one that has added to the mix, the MRM, sorry. Yes. The MRM, and we shall see how that works. I do encourage them. I encourage anyone who wants to run, because it broadens democracy, more ideas come to the fore. I did hear Samuel Keynes, for example, came up with a brilliant idea, I thought, and it added to the mix. And because those who are running government don't have all the ideas, or those who are running opposition don't have all the ideas, he came up with a brilliant idea for when he said they must do hospitality training, whether it's in fourth form or what have you. I mean, it is a brilliant idea. Hospitality training just don't work for the hotel industry and the service industry. It also works for government, people going to government. So in terms of having good personable skills, which is something lack within the government, within the public service, as far as I'm concerned, it helps the country in every way. We're a service society. So it's a brilliant idea, I think.
In essence, the question that we just replayed, when you came to the fore, people speculated, and I said the question that everybody keeps asking, and they asked me to ask you, will you last? The answer was,
well, if the answer was no, that's fine. The answer is no, but at last the broader ideas are being put forward, and as far as I'm concerned, that is a win-win.
So once somebody puts forth the ideas that you wanted, there's no need for you.
No, there's absolutely no need for me in this juncture.
Okay.
As far as that is concerned.
Okay.
Right.
I got you. So I thank you for that. So that you were bold enough to come and launch 3 years ago. You're bold enough to come back and say, well, it didn't last.
Well,
right?
You're conceding that it didn't last, or you're on pause?
Well, he used the word "didn't last," but I like the word. Give me a second. I like the term that we have stepped back and let the process move forward.
Well, that's what I'll use.
What I'm saying.
But that's what I'll use, because I have no dog in this race, so to speak. So that is why I played the clips.
Right.
I don't want to use my words. So the words are, you have stepped back.
Yes. So from now on, going forward, I'm sure you'd say there are 3 parties in the race.
Oh, okay. So I must say there are 3 parties in the race, and the PDA has stepped back.
Correct.
And that will be correct to say.
I like the language.
There are 3 parties in the race. The PDA has stepped back.
Yes, and is not a competitor in this election at all.
I got you. Now let's go to the lines. Good evening, thank you for holding. I'm sorry about that. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to allow him to speak. I listened to the interview with Reg Pemberton, and I could have listened all evening. It was very instructive and very informative as to his journey elsewhere and his return back to Nevis. Well, many of us have taken, well, not many of us, a few of us who are committed to seeing or making a contribution to our island have returned, and as a result, I have made mention of Orville. Orville and I were at the same kindergarten, on to Brownell School, on to St. Croix, and we actually went separate ways. However, with Reg's contribution to Nevis is remarkable. As a result, he has made a great impact with reference to the building industry to Nevis, and I hope that before he hangs up his towel or throw in his towel or hangs up his belt, he would be able to train several other people, many more young people, into the stone building aspect of masonry. That is a dying art, but at the same time, he must not go to the great beyond with all that knowledge with reference to building. And his contribution also in wealth has been remarkable. Based on his stories that I gathered from him, he has made a massive contribution to the financial services industry in Nevis. I take my hat off to Wedge. Anyway, WEBBO, you have a great program this evening.
Okay, thank you much. Any comments on Glendale's? Okay, he is gone, but maybe when Edric comes in, he will comment on the stepping back, because he is my chief political analyst. That's correct. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening. I am one of a Reg fan. When I listened to his story and what took place in his life, I put myself exactly in his shoes, because I wasn't a contractor as known, but I did a lot of it. There's houses that I built, which I am not the type of people ready to go around and say. And I am an upholsterer. I love upholstery. And sometime I reach to the place that even the furniture that come from abroad that looking very well.
Mr. Jeffers, here's what we can do, We can talk to you like we talk to Wedge. You're game for that?
Okay.
Yeah, we can get that organized, We talk to you, because as you mentioned, the upholstery, a lot of folks would know about that and a lot of folks didn't know. So why don't you call me as you normally will do, and we can set it up. How about that?
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks much. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, sir, and how are you this evening?
Good.
I have a question I'd like to pose to Mr. Fleming. He quite rightly mentioned unemployment has a negative impact on criminal activity. So my question is, what ideas, he's parting up with John, what ideas would he have had to put forward to create employment and have a reducing impact on rising criminal activity? Could you share those ideas with us?
You mean Mr. Herbert? Go ahead, Glendale.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I didn't get the gist of the full question, to be frank with you.
Caller, you still here?
If I may repeat?
Quickly, yeah, thanks.
Okay. I think it was one of you guys mentioned unemployment has a negative, increases unemployment. correction, what am I saying? Unemployment has an increasing impact on criminal activity. So then my question, what ideas would you have or have had to create jobs, increase employment, and reduce criminal activity? Could you share those ideas with us?
Well, in terms of creating jobs, I do believe, first of all, I do believe that the government itself would have to create the environment where it's more supportive to the private sector. Now, we've heard the murmurs over the last number of years. The Prime Minister would have said, for example, he would have forwarded 260, 200, 300 million, whatever the actual number is, to Nevis. Now we look at the projects on the ground there for what we've seen in Nevis. From most people I speak to, can't enumerate $100 million worth of projects. Now that means, it seems to me, I would, for example, hear the Premier would have said in the past that pull yourself, tighten your belly when with COVID, when people are being sent home, tighten your belly. You should have saved your money for a rainy day. Now it seems to me the government do have a rainy day fund. So it seems to me that money could have been put aside, for example, or savings could have been put aside to offset a lot of the issues, even for a business, even to buttress businesses, etc., or create the climate for businesses to move forward, particularly within the last 2 years where there's been a COVID economy. So it's just an example where government can set aside and government can do things to make it easier for the private sector.
Caller, you got it?
Yes, one last question, host. Now, I have an idea I'd like to share. We have bludgeoning public sector, and we all know that government should be an employer of last resort. If concessions could be made to the private sector, just let's give me one example. Right now we have, I think it's a 33% income tax on corporate net profit. If that, I'm sorry?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, whatever the number is. If considerations could be given to reduce the rate of corporate tax on condition that the beneficiaries of that reduction create X number of jobs. Studies could be done to see what X means. But anyway, as we reduce your rate of tax, you would hire more people. That to me would be one step forward in reducing unemployment. The taxpayers are giving you a reduction on your taxes, and as a result, you would use those savings to create more people and stimulate spending, stimulate the economy, and at least move us at least one step forward.
Okay. All right, caller?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Yes.
I was basically saying, on the heels of what the gentleman was saying, 33% tax, the corporate tax is really, really awful, really, really high, and it's very onerous on business. It's just too high in terms of comparison to global corporate taxes.
And how low you think it should be?
Well, okay, for example, one of the things that's just been floated around for the European economy was for standard 15%. I think it's not only for European, but they're also trying to include the United States in it, 15% across the board. Corporate tax, places like Ireland and with 11%.
Yeah, we're talking about St. Kitts and Nevis. How much tax it should be?
Well, I think it should be lower than 33.
Yeah.
33 is
how much lower?
To come.
About 10?
No.
15?
It can be 20%. But the point is, what I'm really making, with incentives like the gentleman was saying, I just don't think it's an outliner idea. I think it's a good idea in terms of creating jobs and creating opportunities in the country. If corporations can, at least save more money, you can sort of say, okay, fine. If you're saving more money, they can sort of seek investment in terms of broadening their portfolio and creating more jobs. and more enterprise in the country.
Right. But
That's
you will
basically the idea behind it.
right, but you'll also agree that you said they can do that.
Yeah.
But they can not do it as well.
Of course.
Okay, so it doesn't follow that your suggestion automatically will work. You agree with that?
I agree with that.
And if it doesn't work, then what?
Well, at least we will try something different from what we have, the status quo.
Okay, so the point is then your argument is, and were you to be in power, you would have tried something. It may have worked, it may not have worked. And if it didn't work, then you'll do what? Then what did you do? Exit?
No, you're just.
Yeah, but you see, that's the point.
No, you're just, because there's no certainty in life.
Right.
In anything that we do.
Right. But you see, that is where sometimes the problem comes in. Because sometimes people will just talk. And that is why I try to stay away from that a lot, because I know there is a difference between talk and talk that get result. However, sometimes when you talk, you might be able to people persuade and show them in a logical way that your ideas can work, right? But sometimes that's why people don't go along with our ideas sometimes, because they see that it isn't even persuasive. You agree with that?
Of course.
Yeah, okay.
In a logical way, WEBBO, that the ideas can work. Because sometimes we're asked to give ideas that can create employment. And we speak towards that government should create an environment that encourages, employment. I don't think that's sufficient. Sometimes we got to be more specific.
Right.
And sometimes those who ask that question expect you to be more specific, because you can go around and around the bush. I think the idea that the caller put forward is to be considered, but there's a tipping point right there, because he pay less tax and take on more workers. But that is within his territory, and to see what benefits he can get from that adjustment. If he get a negative benefit, he's not going to do it.
No, absolutely not.
And so it's just another situation where it's up to the company. That particular equation does not work all the time, So
and we know a lot of the times now where you have certain instances where government might give a particular break, and it's not passed on to the consumer either. And when it was done, it was a lot of theoretical arguments that if you do this, so and so be the case, and then you can hardly feel it. Sometimes you would even hear, even when they drop the VAT, or they drop this and drop that, and then when you go and remember Dr. Bartlett years ago used to come, and she used to have some stats, some data, and the price of this stuff don't go down, they were going up. So it's all well and good to talk textbook things, but what does the evidence show?
Like we are in Nevis,
But we still doesn't preclude us from trying something different, WEBBO.
It is all well and good trying something, but if a man tells you that roll over the cliff and you likely might survive.
Do you remember a time in this country, in St. Kitts Nevis, we used to have our tax collection was based on income tax. It was an income tax based revenue-driven economy.
Personal income tax.
Yeah. And then we moved. It was moved in the 90s, I think it was. It was moved to more consumption-based tax, which we collect. We don't go. We move from the income tax side to more the consumption side, where tariffs and all that stuff became more important.
In terms personal of collection, income tax, you have to make a distinction, because you have income tax for businesses.
Personal element, sorry. So, I mean, there are changes sometimes, and I'm not here to say whether or not we're in a better position. That's not the argument, no, that we've changed from the personal income tax to the more the consumption side of income tax, consumption side of taxing. All I'm saying, like the gentleman said, I do believe that the corporate taxes are too high. When you measure it up against most countries today.
Just give me this second. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening, WEBBO, and good evening to your panel this evening. I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Herbert, if I'm allowed to.
You mean Mr. Glendale?
Glendale, yes.
Okay, because you know there's a heavyweight here, so you mean the heavyweight Herbert? Go ahead.
Yes. First question. What sort of you mentioned you were asked a question about what sort of ideas you would put forward to help improve the economy, improve employment, and reduce crime. And you started out by talking about $260 million was banded about by the Prime Minister. And you claim that looking around Nevis, you don't see any projects that would justify that amount of money. What sort of projects are you looking for from a government, first of all?
To answer your question frankly, let's take for example Montetrack. Montetrack doesn't have, in my opinion, does not have a multiplier effect in the economy. It's there, but it doesn't produce capital in the economy or jobs. Yes, it's a $15 million spending, but it does not do that. To me, we could have done something different. That could have create a small business fund, whatever it is. I'm just merely saying, it's how your priorities your spending. Now, if you look around and you point out, I haven't seen anybody defend the question of $260-300 million in terms of where the money went. I haven't seen anyone put out a dossier or anything to that effect and stating how the monies were spent.
Maybe because some feel like the question is irrelevant, like I do.
No, it cannot be irrelevant when it's public spending. That doesn't make no sense.
You talk about the Mundo track. So every project that a government put forward must have a multiplying effect. You don't take into consideration that the children, the youth of this country will benefit from that project. Okay, you talk about projects. You still haven't told me what sort of projects. You talk about the Mundo track. Ask what sort of project you would like to see. Not those that are there before. What sort of project you would like to see. The other question, development in a country doesn't always have to have a multiplying effect in terms of say a project that's going to generate funds. You drive on better roads in the last 5 years. The school has been refurbished. Better water, better electricity, more housing for people. Aren't those important projects?
Of course they're important, and that is what...
And then you go around, you talk about $260 million. The government's salary per month is about $5 million per month. Multiply that by 12, then by 6. And see how much you get, and see how much would be left out of that $260 million.
I am not... are you finished?
So these are the things you got to look at.
I am not...
You came back here from where you are. You haven't seek to create a business that will provide employment for anybody. The government cannot do it alone. Government needs help. People like you come back with a lot of ideas, and up here you can't advance one idea as to how to move Nevis forward. I asked you to give me a project that you feel could have been an outcome of the $260 million. You're going to talk about the Mundo track and multiplying effect. I didn't ask you about what was in the past. I asked you about what can you do. What sort of project can you put forward to reduce the stuff that you claim?
I do believe the airport project is a grand project that could have been done. The lengthening of the runway to 7,000 feet from where it is. I do believe that it has the capacity, Nevis has a capacity where it can have what do you call them? Where you can have a hangar, not a hangar, but a base where planes, aircrafts can be housed, and where aircrafts can be housed, where they can be clean, private jets and the likes can be a fixed base operation there. I do believe it wouldn't have taken more than $25 million to do that. I think that creates a lot of jobs. That would have created jobs in terms of cleaning crews, refueling crews, expansion. You could have gotten direct flights coming in. Angola is now getting, I think, American Airlines, they're getting JetBlue. They just announced recently. I think we could have been getting charter flights in directly from the United States in terms of large groups of 4 seasons when they bring in huge groups. Charter. These are examples which would kick it. Hold on a minute. Hold on. You asked for ideas. I'm giving you. Hold on. I'm giving you ideas. You signed a contract. Listen to me, man. You signed a contract some time ago. You said you were doing something to the airport. We haven't heard back from you about it. These are ideas. So you're asking me what kind of ideas? I'm not in government. I'm giving you something on the table right now that's tangible, that can make money for the country and create. Hold on a minute. I listen to you now. And create another avenue and opening up that part of the country in terms of creating the taxi drivers and whatnot. When people come in groups, or when wealthy people come in, you have to have concierge service and all that sort of thing. These are the kind of ideas we're talking about. So that's a good one for you. That would generate good income in the country and bring in new capital in the country that's not there right now.
Yeah. But you feel like everything should be put through the government, should be the will done by the government.
No.
You claim to be
You asked me a question, I answered what kind of projects. I gave you a tangible, solid project.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we do this?
You didn't like it.
Okay, the caller has left. Go ahead, Glendale.
No, yeah. So I mean, that's just one idea that can create jobs and opportunities in the country that is not existing at the moment. It's a new avenue. It could have created a new avenue. The development of the airport. You would expand the runway. There was a study done.
Okay. Just pause. Go ahead, caller.
Good evening. I'd like to respond to the argument of the previous caller. Governments are elected by the people, for the people, and to do for the people what they can do for themselves, cheaper. All right? Yes, they have a responsibility to produce. He mentioned the creation of roads. Roads are a function of government. You allow vehicles to come into the island, you collect import duty, you collect annual rates, so you're obligated to provide roads on which those vehicles have to be driven. So you don't come tell me that if a government pave a piece of road, it's doing the public a favor. That is a responsibility of government. Because government collects, significant sums on every vehicle that is brought in and operated on the island. And of course, the government must take the bull by the horns and also, well, you elect me, now I need your help. If you need my help, then move out the way, let me sit in the chair and do the job. Don't come tell me you need my help. You said you have ideas. You asked me to elect you, I elected you, then perform. That's your function. Okay? Again, governments are designed to do for its citizens what they can do for themselves cheaper. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Naya, you wanted to get in? Or Glendale, were you finished?
Well, just basically, that's the government job is to build the roads, build the railways, build the dams, and make the water run and electricity run. And if you can, I mean, that's your basic job. Don't tell me the nonsense that you do all this. That is your job that we're elected to do.
Well, let me ask you this. If that's the job and they did it, why are you making noise for them to do other things?
The question was asked.
No, you said, work with me. You said that is their job.
Yes.
And they said they have done that.
No. The question is what investments or what the government should do.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Herbert, and to everyone. How to make some money in Nevis? If you go around and check, there's more than 100 boats in Nevis. Mr. Herbert, it costs about $300 to $350 to take a boat out the water, a fishing boat. I have one, and to put it back in. That's another $300 to $350 if you ain't got a good connection. During the hurricane season, people take the boat out the water at least 3 times and put it back in. Where does the launch them go when there's hurricane season to shelter from the storm? We need to get a marina. If the government was to build a boat marina and charge $1,000 for boat, depending on the size, that's over $100,000 a year. Quietly like that. You have people working in a marina. In Nevis, Mr. Herbert, to get a pass for a boat, I'm trying to get a stop switch. And the price to pay to go to sink it and come back is more than the switch.
So you think government should sell the switches?
No. In Nevis, you can't buy nothing for a boat. Only paint.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, so then what you think we should do? Since you have to go to sink it to get it, what do you think we should do?
No, that's why I'm saying if the government get an investor, maybe they could try me.
Yeah, well, why don't you come? Why does the government have to get you?
Well, Mr. Herbert,
come forward.
If you see the
Naya say you must come forward. Why does the government have to get you?
Well, like the gentleman said, they have all the ideas, they don't need mine.
Oh, they have all the ideas.
Yeah.
So you're giving them yours as well.
I'm giving them mine for free. let's see who will come forward, Mr. Herbert.
Yes.
And then the discussion will continue.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
All right. Yes.
Interesting ideas.
Yeah, but you see, you know what I find is interesting. I feel very discouraged, Glendale, to some degree. But I like when a person put the cards on the table, because you got so much ideas. But what you said, I must say officially again?
I'm not a candidate for anything, so let's move on.
No.
I have no.
Dr. Bartlett, you're a doctor. What he said, I must say officially.
Yeah.
He has stepped back.
He has stepped back.
I'm not a candidate for that.
He has stepped back.
But Webbo, if I may though,
Yes.
interesting conversation, and I know that tonight we are focusing on the Mr. Glendale, the status
That he has stepped back. Okay.
of his party.
Yes.
And I think maybe, in all fairness, some of the questions that are leveled at him may not be necessarily fair. He has already said that he stepped back, not that he doesn't have ideas, because I know him. He's a guy who has a lot of ideas. But what is interesting, I find, in Nevis is that when people are in opposition, they have all of the ideas, and you've said that. The government of the day had all of the ideas. And now they're very aggressive about trying to suggest that the fault is the fault of everybody else. So no one else has an idea, as to how to move things forward. And I find that rather interesting. And that's why I decided, to stay mute for a bit. Because some of these very ideas that are being floated now, I would have seen these ideas in a manifesto. I've seen an idea relative to the creation of a marina, and the suggestion then was that an investor was already lined up, and going on 7 years now, and nothing has come to it. As a matter of fact, I'm hearing that even the property that should have been settled, because it's government property, has not been paid for yet. And I'm wondering, why are we not doing any of the things that we would have promised people in your manifesto? This is why people would have voted for you. So you have an obligation to at least try to, because you can't sit back now and say, no ideas coming from the opposition, no ideas coming from even Glenn, who doesn't have a party. He said he has stepped back. Why you're putting pressure on him? And then when people want to try and defend the fact that you get $371 million and squander it without even creating any jobs, I have a problem with that. As my good friend JD would say, I have a problem with that. You can't get $371 million, squander it, and then come back and say that you can't find work for people, and we should have a hospitality. This, even speaking to the matter of creating a hospitality school or something like that, I can't remember exactly the term that they had used. That was in the manifesto. We haven't done any of that. So I'm saying, hold the government accountable. Get upset with the government. Don't get upset with Glenn. He's not running. Don't get upset with the opposition. We're just trying to suggest that we may have a better way of doing things. And people are to be held accountable. And until we do that, we're not going to advance. This blame game, you can't keep blaming everybody else who's not in a position to effect change. The people who are in a position to effect change demand the things that they ask you to put them in power, to deliver.
You know what I find is interesting, generally speaking, and that is why you see I've done this thing over a couple of decades, and I notice in general that the way we debate is I talk on this forum and then somebody else talks on the other forum. Now I remember when we used to grow up, and I would tell you this thing about Glendale, but not tell him I said so, I'll tell him anything and so on. Because we want to persuade the other person without the benefit of the other person defending themselves. You know what I'm getting at? I would like to talk to everybody. That's what I would really like to, because I keep hearing about this 300 and 200 and all this hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm just listening, because I want to weigh in at some point. Because I got a couple of questions to ask about it.
Can I suggest something?
Sure.
Well, the person who sent the $371 million said that they sent it. So now I think maybe you should ask the person who received it what did they do with the $371 million, if indeed that is the extent to which, or the amount that they would have received. As simple as that, and I think
that's
you
your
can settle
suggestion.
it there. That is my suggestion, and I think we settle it after
okay,
that.
let me take this. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webber, and good evening to all of your panelists. Now I've been listening to the analysis, but analysis must be done within the proper context. You can't, I don't mean you personally, but persons can't be making demands that can only be met and done when the economy is running normally. I mean, I listened to some of they should have done this and done that in a COVID economy. I mean, we've got to be realistic. And isn't the maintenance of employment commendable? Because we're asking they could hire more people. The very maintenance of the economy adds to the economy, So would you rather that they send home people and do what you think they should have done? We got to understand the economy dealing with. What you're saying may be commendable, but you can't expect not even Biden to be doing what you're asking. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So we should be a little more rational, understand the economy. We just start to climb out of the hole. You would have heard the Premier say that they have accumulated debt in just trying to keep the economy afloat. So subtract the 300 and something from the 500 that he borrowed. You see where we at? We can't be having partial conversations. Bring into context the debt. So he get all this money and he kept the people employed. Should he have let them go and do the projects he wanted? Or should he have used the money instead to pay down the debt and put the people in the breadline? What all the countries need both NEBIS and SIG, they need a proper development plan, not a wish list. A proper development plan that goes to SIG and NEBIS as to where you're heading, what you want, and then you'd be able to have conversation. Now to Mr. Glendale, if he's not running, why is he on the platforms? I've said before and I say again.
What platform, ma'am?
Again,
what platform?
These parties that are springing up, they're nothing but parties to create. So just splinter, they want to splinter the votes.
Ma'am, I'm not on a platform. I'm not even contesting an election or put my name out there for anything.
But your conversation is the same as the NRP. I mean, anybody with common sense.
Listen. There are two opposition parties currently
and both are saying the same thing.
Hear me out. I don't think the NRP is saying the same thing that the MRM is saying.
Really?
So if you listen to both, in my opinion, I don't think they're saying the same thing. So they have different. Everybody has a different view.
But they have the same objective.
So what is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? With Nivision wanting to create a better Nevis for Nivisions?
Indiana is strong enough to fight for itself.
But he's not fighting. He's a private citizen and he has a right.
For the NRP.
Could I ask a question?
He's not talking for the NRP.
Could I ask you a question, ma'am?
Yes, brother.
In St. Kitts, you had three parties come together against Labour to move Labour out of power. You were open to that because I'm sure you would have been a supporter of the Unity alignment. Correct?
Do you remember the NIP?
Again, PLP, PAM, PLP, PAM, and
the 2015 election? Do you remember?
And CCM, sorry, all came together to. So, what is wrong in Nevis with two other parties? Hold on a minute. Let's converse.
Those were established.
PLP was established when, ma'am?
Okay, why don't we do this? Glendale, go ahead, and then caller will, you can respond. Go ahead, Glendale.
PLP was established in the 2015 election cycle. I mean, and they were at that point the unity thing came together and formed the government. Now, if there's the MRM and if the NLP or whatever other party comes along, they have a right to do it.
But
it's good for you and saying that they're not going to do this.
Then one on. Okay, so
you don't plan to run. All right then.
Okay, if I could respond though, I know it was not directed at me, but just an observation. Every time the conversation comes up, people get defensive, and you're saying that the government can't send home people. That is the second time I'm hearing the same argument presented by the same person, and it makes no sense. Because to me, it doesn't make any sense to me, not that maybe it makes sense to other people. Because we're talking about over a period of time. We're not talking about just the COVID period of time. Government didn't just come into, into the seat of government, the CCM, in 2019 when COVID started. What we are seeing is that since 2017 to now, there has been a downward trajectory in everything in Nevis. Everything has gone down to past zero now. It is in the negative. Everything. We have been racking up deficits every year up to this point. We have not been creating any jobs. We've been losing jobs every year up to this point. Okay, we would have put some people on step or pep or whatever the name of the thing is now, and we said, okay, well, Social Security collecting more money now. But these people are people in menial positions. These are not people who have any future in the jobs that were created. By the time we need a breakdown, nothing is there to do. We're talking about meaningful and sustainable development. We're talking about people who want a steady job. And we hear the cries from these people because they can't approach a bank to better their position because you can't go there and tell them you're on step. You can't get a loan. You can't advance yourself. What we're saying is that with $371 million that came, instead of wasting it, and a lot of people in a position who collecting more than they ought to anyway, instead of wasting it, we could have been having programs to engage all these youths.
Okay, this $371 million, it comes up again. And you had indicated earlier that if the person said that they sent it, correct? And then you said that the person who received it, if they said what they did with it, then end of story, something to that effect. That's what you said?
I think a lot of people will be satisfied
okay,
with accountability.
Right.
Yeah.
So
accountability is the issue here for us.
Right. So if I understand it clearly, were the Premier to outline what he did with that money that was sent, that's
I will stop talk about it.
Okay. All right. Yes, now you wanted to say something?
Yes, WEBBO, there's a local election coming up soon, and we got to be mindful here as Nevisians as to the influences that we receive that arrive here in Nevis from elsewhere. I believe there are people who is participating in the mix to confuse, and I refer to them as mercenaries because enough times, they have basically falsified the situation here in Nevis to their personal, what they want to happen. We got to be mindful here in Nevis, the people across the water sometimes just confuses Nevisians as to what we're on about going forward for Nevis. And so I just want the people to be mindful of that.
I don't. Well, maybe people ought always to be mindful of stuff like that, because not everybody have good intentions for you. But having said that, though, I don't understand why you're trying to suggest that Nevisians are so gullible that they will just fall for anything.
Well, they seem to be gullible since the 1960s up till now.
Oh, you're not giving us any credit for advancing, eh?
Have we advanced?
Well, I would like to think so. I would not want to insult Nevisians tonight.
Well, no respect. I'm saying that.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Well, good evening. This is Premier Mark Brantley.
Yes.
I'm delighted to have the chance to call into your program because I'm listening and I'm a little astonished at some of the things that I'm hearing. You know, it's unfortunate that divisions have got to a point where, whether it is in the quest for power or whatever it is they desire, they have allowed themselves to be hoodwinked, and that's the language that I would use. We have heard much being said about 300. One time they say it's 260. Now I'm hearing 371, whatever the number may be. And it puzzles me that people have not stopped for a moment and say, well, why is this number being circulated? For what purpose? And if this number is being circulated, why is it that divisions, let's just forget about party for a moment, aren't asking for full accountability insofar as these numbers are concerned? No questions of that. Instead, numbers are bandied about, and our own people jump on a predictable bandwagon and start to say what was done with the money. As if they can't see, as if they can't hear, as if their senses have fled to brutish hearts. So, as I listen, I said to myself, when this government got into office in 2013, and these funds, because I hear some reference to 2017, I suppose that's convenient because I became Premier at the end of 2017. But the CCM has been in office since 2013. But let me just deal with 2015, when Team Unity got into office, and that's the point at which some monies from the CBI started to flow to the island of Nevis. And people drive around here. Prior to that, our young people, WEBBO, our promising athletes, they ran on a dirt track up at Grove Park, ETW Park. That's what they did. We took the decision that we would build a proper facility so that they would have a proper track to run and practice, so that when they went to St. Kitts to the Kim Collins Stadium, they could compete on an equal footing with their colleagues over there. What is wrong with that? I hear the chatter about these projects not creating capital. Which government projects create capital in quite that way? Yes, the reference was made to an airport. But much of government spending is spent on infrastructural development, roads, bridges. What capital do they create? The truth is that, as somebody has pointed out, government has certain responsibilities. And those responsibilities are to maintain the infrastructure. We don't just look at it in the context of what capital it creates. We also need to look at it in the difference it makes in people's lives. So look at our young people, young Tommy, young Susie, promising athletes. They now have a first-class facility that they could go to and practice and train. I suppose when people drive by, they don't see that. We look at the Newcastle police station. It was abandoned. Rat infested, termite infested. They were in office at one point, the police station was left there. We decided, no, our men and women in uniform deserve better. We fixed and built a brand new police station in Newcastle. Roads, all up and down this country. The infrastructure in terms of roads has been transformed. And I like Brownhill Road in particular, because most of us drive it every day. I moved to Brownhill as a boy, WEBBO, and I'm now a man, nearly 60. And it is the first time that Brownhill Road has been touched in all of those years. Driving it for yourself, Braziers, Shaw's Road, Island Main Road, all across the island. Our water taxi pier. We decided that the water taxi is 100% Division owned at this point. All the operators are from Nevis. And we decided to invest in them. And we put down that water taxi pier. And I challenge anybody to tell me that it has not revolutionized travel between the two islands. Our CCTV command center. Perhaps it's tucked away in the back so people miss it. Salaries and wages. And yes, I'm going to mention that. Because for the past 2 years, our economy has been practically locked down, shut down. And every single worker for government, every single worker for statutory corporations, every single pensioner on the island of Nevis has been paid in full and on time. And let us just remember that our wage bill, I heard somebody call in earlier and say 5 million, it is closer to $7 million per month. So you do the math for yourself, WEBBO, and you will see what I'm talking about. Our hospital expansion, still going, slated to be finished next year. But that again is a significant, the most significant investment in healthcare ever made in the history of Nevis. We assisted financially Four Seasons workers, if you recall, when they were laid off. We've had 2 full years of COVID. And sometimes I wonder whether or not our people who are pontificating and have all the ideas have forgotten that this island has been essentially battered and bruised by COVID in terms of the economy for 2 years. And yes, people are suffering as the Premier of Nevis. There's not a day go by that I don't agonize over that. But what we need are people to come with ideas and say, listen, this is how I think we can make a difference. The constant coming and bashing and what really? No ideas are being advanced. None whatsoever. The park at Pin is WEBBO, since we continue to talk about projects. Jointly funded by the NIA and the Taiwanese government. We're going to open it on December 19th. And I'm inviting all who are there on your panel so that they can come and see what it is we're doing on the island of Nevis, since they claim they don't know. Housing development all across Nevis. For the first time in the history of land and housing, we have development at Madden, University Heights, Cherry Gardens, Hamilton, Craddock Road, soon to be in Rices, all happening simultaneously. And this now is the point I want to make, WEBBO. They talk about jobs. Who's building all of these things? Who is building them? Nivisions, Nivision contractors, Nivision workers, Nivision trucks and backhoes, Nivision owned, plumbers, artisans. Every road project we do in Nevis is done by us and for us. And you compare and contrast that to what used to be the case, when projects that were done here were all done by a foreign company. That has been the difference. And so when they say, oh no, jobs are being created, I wonder if roads build themselves, if the hospital expansion is building itself. All of these projects are being done by us and for us. Before I leave, I want to just mention something, because I heard one of your panelists talking about lands not being paid for. And they thought by now lands will be paid for. And I sat upright. You know why? The Nevis Reformation Party in government took lands from people in this island, left, right, and center. The government has a right to compulsorily acquire land, but the law is clear. They also have a duty and an obligation to pay for them. The NRP took land it never paid for any. And that has been a burden on my government since we have been in, to try now to find money to pay for lands that were taken and not paid for. And so yes, we have not yet paid for the West Haven land. But the reason we have not yet paid for the West Haven lands is the cost of those lands over the years that the NRP took it has now escalated to well beyond $20 million. And what we have been trying to do is to come to a compromise arrangement where we can pay over time. And we have made proposals to the owners to do that. I say that to say this. Had we not had that mismanagement, had we not had them taking people's lands without payment, we would not be in that quagmire today. And nobody could point a finger at us in government. You can't create a mess and then point a finger at somebody else and say, oh, you have not solved the mess, without taking responsibility for the mess that you created. These things really agitate me, because we are going out there every day working for the people of Nevis. I am not saying, WEBBO, that we get it right all the time. Nobody does. But I know on balance that this island is better off, this island is in capable hands, and that we will continue to manage to the best of our ability for the benefit of the people of Nevis. And all of those who say they can't see, well, I am sure if you brought Stevie Wonder here, he would see, and he would see with 2020 vision what has been happening on this island of Nevis. WEBBO, thank you very much.
Mr. Bentley, before you go, and I allowed you to expound on that particular thing, because I had mentioned that I keep hearing about this 200 and something million and so on. And I said, before you called in, I said to Dr. Bartlett, so the Prime Minister said that he sent the money. Well, I didn't say the Prime Minister. Someone said they sent the 270 something million dollars. And I said, so want Mr. Brantley to say what he did with it. And I think, you can correct me, Dr. Bartlett said, if he says what he did with it, then that's the end of that story. Am I correct, Dr. Bartlett?
Correct.
Okay, so I think, thank you, Mr. Brantley. I guess that's the end of that story.
No, but he hasn't said what he did with it, WEBBO.
But he just...
No.
Okay.
What he did, he just said that falls very short of 371 million.
Yeah, but how much it came to?
From my estimation, he didn't even come to 100 million yet for what he just said.
Okay, but that's all right.
So he ain't saying what he did with 371. Maybe he satisfy a part of it, and I will give him that. He did a little thing with it, but nothing.
Okay, but here is it though.
WEBBO?
Yes, y'all can do the math. And
let me call him on his show then. Let me call him on his show. You ever shut him all night? Let me call him then.
Well, just let me do this then. What I'm saying, yes, Mr. Brantley.
I'm still on the line. I didn't hang up yet. Let me just say this: that this preoccupation with whether it's 260 or 370, by tomorrow it might be 400.
No, it's 371.
But this preoccupation about what happened with the money, and the response that I'm just hearing now from one of your panelists saying that that was not an explanation as to what. Let me just point out, for example, that in wages and salaries and pensions for the island of Nevis, over this past period, including 2 years when the island has been locked down, amounts to well over $500 million.
Wages and salaries, Mr. Premier?
If the preoccupation is with 260, 370, whatever the number is.
It's not a preoccupation, it is 371.
If the preoccupation is
Well, Mr. Brantley, hold it. Mr. Brantley, hold on. Hold on. Well, let me ask you this. When the $371 million or whatever was given, did it give any details?
Details in terms of...
No, not you, Mr. Brantley. Did you get details on it, Dr. Bartlett, or you just got a figure?
For me, it was on your station.
Work with me. You're the person who was mentioning it. I'm asking you that when you got the 371 figure and you brought it here, did you get details?
Oh yes, they have details.
So give us the details.
I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah,
if I know we're talking about it, I would bring it. WEBBO, you're not being fair. You're not being fair. I didn't anticipate you'd be talking about 371 tonight. I don't have it.
WEBBO, my brother.
No. Hold on, Mr. Brantley. Hold on, Mr. Brantley. Dr. Bartlett.
Yes.
Right? You said that it was 370 million. No,
71.
Mr. You asked for the details.
Yes.
I asked you if any details were given.
Yes.
Right? Right. And I asked you what the details were. You said you didn't have them.
Right, I don't have them in front of me.
So that's fine. Okay. Now,
I can get them.
But work with me. Right? We're going to leave it there because, as I said, when I asked if Mr. Brantley were to call and he were to say what the money was spent for, you said you'll accept that. He said it, you said, well, you're not accepting it. Okay, Mr. Brantley, thank you very much. Work with me. Dr. Bartlett says she will call you tomorrow.
I am no fool. If I'm coming and give back the story,
Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yeah, good evening.
Hello.
Yes.
You have a half a minute.
Okay, good. Quickly, it disturbs me to hear the Premier come on the air and blame his failure on COVID. The Premier's been in office for 5 years or whatever. COVID is less than 2 years old. The management administration has been a failure from the day it steps into office, and that point must be made.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for holding. You have half a minute.
Well, half a minute. Anyway, I think that Dr. Bartlett hit the nail on the head. Those who went to the people with a promise to deliver investors and jobs and projects and the like should be held accountable. That's the bottom line.
Okay.
And if you can't deliver, get out and let somebody else do it.
Okay. Thank you. Naya, you want the last word?
Well, we're in a season, and I would encourage anybody to be a part of the debate, and to be conscious in their support of whatever political.
And it's going to get warmer than this. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On Demand. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. You all have a wonderful evening.